Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you so much for your support, liking, subscribing these videos to grow the Sangha. So important. Thank you for your practice, right? That's the most important thing. That's what we're all here to do. Build our confidence, build our reservoir of knowledge and confidence so that when we chant, we do so with conviction and a strength that we're actually instantiating our Buddha mind. Because that is the way by which we can experience samsara as a constant opportunity and precious life and not be buried by, some things that want to be obstacles. Let's not let them be obstacles. They're just part of life, yes? In that regard, well, in regards to our practice, this letter, not very long one, is a response to a gentleman, Yasaburo. And the response is an interesting response because it lets us peer into the logistics of Nichiren's thinking about Lotus Sutra practice, which ultimately is about karma. How do we experience karma? How do we deal with karma? How do we keep our mind of Buddha-ness and suchnesses engaged so that the vicissitudes, the repercussions of karmic influences we fully appreciate and don't bury us in their experiences of negativity, which ultimately rise from our mind itself. So, right, seizing control of our mind away from our samsaric attachment to things, which is where all of our difficulties stem. So this Yasaburo is thought to possibly be a samurai, but more important than, although that's a tidbit of information that whether he's a samurai or not, he's a practitioner of Nichiren's teachings of the Lotus Sutra, and he's going to end, evidently a pretty notable practitioner because he's going to enter a debate with a, is it Pure Land? Yeah, a Pure Land monk. So Nichiren is preparing him with certain arguments that he can make specifically with the Pure Land people. Interesting. So here we go. Nichiren begins with, I suggest you begin the scholarship debate with these words. Quote, although I am an ignorant layman, among the teachings I have heard, I was especially impressed by the passage in the second volume of the Lotus Sutra that reads, right, the Hoben chapter, the one that we recite in Gongyo. Quote, this threefold world is all my domain, end quote. This sutra passage means that this country of Japan is the domain of Shakyamuni Buddha. In addition to the fact that all the deities, such as the Sun Goddess, Great Bodhisattva Hachiman, Emperor Jimmu, and all the people from the ruler of the nation on down dwell in his realm, he is the Buddha to whom we living beings are greatly indebted for three reasons. First, he is our sovereign. Second, he is our teacher. And third, he is our father. Right? Those three aspects we've talked about. And when we enact Shakyamuni's teachings, we in fact become our own parent, teacher, and sovereign. I have a whole video on that. Among all the Buddhas of the 10 directions, only Shakyamuni Buddha is endowed with these three virtues. Therefore, even if all the people of the country of Japan were to serve Shakyamuni Buddha wholeheartedly, just as they now do Amida Buddha, if they were to place him side by side with another Buddha and treat him in the same manner, that would still be a grave error, right? For example, though someone were our own ruler, and wise besides, if we were to shift our allegiance to the ruler of another country, for instance, if we, while dwelling in Japan, we were to pay honor to the king of China or Koryo and slight the sovereign of Japan, could we be called persons who honor the great sovereign of this country? Interesting point, right? This is all the more true in the case of the monks of Japan, who, without exception, have shaved their heads and donned their robes as disciples of the thus come one Shakyamuni. They are not the disciples of Amida Buddha, who's an emanation, an imagination, a mental construct of Shakyamuni. However, monks who have no halls in their temples where Shakyamuni is enshrined or where the lotus meditation is practiced, and who have neither painted nor wooden images of Shakyamuni, nor even a copy of the Lotus Sutra, have set aside Shakyamuni Buddha, who is fully endowed with the three virtues. In each district, village, and household throughout the country, they have erected more images than there are people of Amida Buddha, who possesses not a single one of these three virtues, parent, teacher, sovereign. And they chant the name of Amida Buddha exclusively, 60,000 or 80,000 times a day. Although such acts appear to be most admirable, when we view the matter in the light of the Lotus Sutra, we find that these good people are guilty of offenses heavier than those of wicked men who daily commit the 10 evil, the unlife-affirming, difficult acts. Evil people do not rely on any Buddha whatsoever, so they cannot be accused of disloyalty. Moreover, if they should become good people, they might even devote themselves to the Lotus Sutra. Yet it is difficult to imagine that the people of Japan could ever turn their hearts with more seriousness and affection toward Shakyamuni than Amida Buddha, or toward the Lotus Sutra than the Nembutsu. Thus they are evil doers who only resemble virtuous people, and among these erroneous viewed people, they are the worst and most terrible slanderers and ichantikas. Somebody asked me about that word. See, anytime they're not, ichantikas, although in some literature they seem to refer to a specific, like Hinayanists, right? Ichantika is a term that represents anyone, any practitioner or non-practitioner who works against or impedes the practice of the ultimate teaching, the Lotus. Because they are of incorrigible disbelief in definition means that they refuse what we would say in Buddhism, the good medicine of the Lotus Sutra. Right? There's a whole story about that, the physician and his three sons. Or persons of incorrigible disbelief. There it is, in all of Jambudvipa. With regard to such people, Shakyamuni Buddha declared in the second volume of the Lotus Sutra, quote, when his life comes to an end, he will enter the Avicii hell. Moment to moment, right? Life, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. With that cause, effect is immediate, right? It's not cause here, and I know we talk about latent effects, but the effect itself is constructed in the cause. Because life is a moment-to-moment, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, right? So that's what is meant, in the translation anyway, when his life comes to an end, when this moment enters the next birth, death cycle, you will immediately, in other words, go into the Avicii hell, which I've already described many times as simply this life, this world, this samsaric physical reality for which our mind is already designed to attach itself to identify self. Right? We want to break that attachment Not get rid of samsara, but we want to break our attachment, that energy of habit forming, obsession, containing, owning, right? And dislodge ourselves like a parent, teacher, or sovereign as an observer and manage our life, our karma manifesting with intelligence, distance, compassion. The monks of Japan, and that's quite a long statement that Nichiren has given him to open the debate with, right? On the one hand, it's kind, but it's very direct. It states the whole position right off the bat, right? The monks of Japan today are all men of great delusion. I keep trying to find a different word for evil because that's a social, cultural bias. I don't like that word because it's not indicative of the teachings of Buddhism, right? To say something is evil is to imply that the power is from outside, and that's not Buddhism. Everything that occurs in our mind is of our own perception. That's what Buddhism is about, the way the mind works, not the way it's infected by exterior forces we have no control of. I talk about influence all the time, but that doesn't mean that somebody else is influencing me. It means that my mind is being influenced by somebody else. Always, always, always return to your own mind's function, right? This is why parents always stop saying, he made me do that, or she made me do it. They can't do that. You've made a decision to own that influence. That's Buddhist thinking. That's Buddha way. So yeah, I want to strike that word out of all the vocabulary of these translations. So he's talking about all the monks, because they're all in the Mbutsu, not all of them, but a great number. And in his Pure Land debate, he's talking about all these monks of Amida Buddha all day long, that they're surpassing even Devadatta or the Venerable Kokalika, which is well documented in the sutras, as enemies of Shakyamuni Buddha, or of Buddha writ large, right? Our enlightened potential of experience, yes? And because lay people revere them and make them offerings, right? They're not well read. They don't know any different. They're being told by these monks that this is the way to go, so they all follow, right? Authoritarians. This country is being transformed before our very eyes into the hell of incessant suffering. There it is. By being diverted away from our Buddha mind, we exist in the Avicii hell, the hell of incessant suffering. He says it specifically right here. I'm going to read it again, okay? And because lay people revere them and make them offerings, this country is being transformed before our very eyes into the hell of incessant suffering, where countless people in their present existence, in addition to undergoing starvation, pestilence, and horrible agonies unknown in previous ages, will be attacked by foreign power. This is due solely to the workings of deities like Brahma, Shakra, and the deities of the sun and moon. Our earthly, regular, day-to-day physical reality is the fodder for our suffering. But our suffering doesn't come from the chair, the guitar, the computer, the mate, the lover, the sister, the brother, the mother, the father. It's all happening in here, in our minds. The way that we experience all of those things is reality, our reality, and we can alter it by simply shifting our perspective. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, is the way to open that mind of clarity, of separation, which ironically, the word separation implies non-engagement, but in reality, Buddhist compassion is much more profound engagement, because then perceiving the moment-to-moment manifestations of potential, we are cohorts, we are with the process of life, in it, with, instead of, one can easily argue from this standpoint, that when we're in a physical reality, samsaric reality, the reason we want to collect and obsess about ownership is because we see everything as separate, outside of ourselves. So we want to glom onto everything to identify a self which isn't defined by possessions. You see? In Japan, I alone understand why such things are happening. At first, I pondered whether or not I should speak out. Yet, what was I to do? When you see something this blindingly obvious, how can you not say it? Right? The emperor's naked. Duh. Right? Could I turn my back on the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha, who is the father and mother to all living beings? Resolving to bear whatever might befall me, I began to speak out. And in these more than 20 years, I have been driven from my dwelling. My disciples have been killed, and I have been wounded, exiled twice, and finally was nearly beheaded. I spoke out solely because I had long known that the people of Japan would meet with great suffering, and I felt pity for them. Thoughtful persons should therefore realize that I have met these trials for their sake. He's not trying to martyrize himself. He's trying to demonstrate his role and the truth that he is speaking and the resistance against it, right? But his mind is firm. An actual example of dealing with karmic repercussions. Nichiren is well aware that these repercussions are not just from outside of himself, but they speak to his own early doubts and struggles with these teachings until he couldn't doubt anymore. And he's expiating all of this. Otherwise, why would he survive? Could have been dead many times over, yeah? If they were people who understood their obligations or who were capable of reason, then out of 2 blows that fall on me, they would receive 1 in my stead. But far from it, rather, they arouse hatred toward me, which is something I cannot understand. Right? How difficult is it? If any of you are parents, you'll know what this is exactly about. You try to help your child avoid pain, suffering, and they go headlong into it. It breaks your mind, doesn't it? I told you. You don't want to say I told you so, but damn it, yeah? And lay people, not having heard the truth, either drive me from my dwelling place or hate my disciples. Don't we see this in the world today, by the way? This kind of division, how ugly it is. How do we get past it, yeah? It is beyond comprehension, Nichiren says. For example, even if unwittingly we mistook our parents for enemies and reviled or struck and killed them, how could we avoid the guilt of that offense? These people, failing to recognize their own rudeness, seem to think that I, am rude. They are like a jealous woman with furious eyes who, unaware that she glares at a courtesan, her own expression is disagreeable, instead complains that the courtesan's gaze is frightening. Interesting example. Explain that these things have happened solely because the ruler has failed to inquire about Buddhist doctrines, and that the reason no inquiry has been made is that the people of this country are guilty of so many offenses that they're difficult and painful karmic repercussions have destined them unfairly to be attacked by a foreign country in this lifetime and to fall into the hell of incessant suffering into the future, right? As we've already discussed. And please add something along these lines. Quote, I believe this because it is clearly recorded in the sutras. I'm not making it up. Even though you may attack and threaten insignificant persons like ourselves or drive us from our homes, in the end, you will never get away with it. The resolve of this monk is such that it is most unlikely that even the sun goddess or great bodhisattva Hachiman can make him obey, let alone ordinary persons like this monk, right? That is why we hear that he has never quailed, even in the face of repeated persecutions, but has instead become all the more firmly determined. Now he's having to make this statement in defense of Nichiren. So interesting. I'm not sure of the context of this debate. But it's interesting. On the one hand, he's talking about the actual teachings themselves, and then he's shifted to more of the author of these doctrines, this clarity of these teachings is Nichiren. Let's not beat around the bush. This is who you're trying to impale here. So as an envoy of Nichiren in this debate, let me stand not only for what he teaches and what Shakyamuni Buddha teaches, but for our modern day bodhisattva here alive now with us, Nichiren. It's quite a powerful tool of debate. Might shift the argument a bit, though. I'm not sure about this. But I don't know the structure of these debates, right? Let's go a little further. Now, if that monk objects, if this Pure Land monk objects, he's talking about Nichiren now, that's not whatever, then respond by asking if what you have just said is a distorted view. Do you think I'm making this up? Do you think I just invented this to be argumentative? Ask him whether or not the Lotus Sutra contains a passage stating that Shakyamuni Buddha is our parent, our teacher, and our sovereign, right? Are you contesting what I've said? Because I can quote it, right? If he answers that it does, demand to know if a passage exists stating that Amida Buddha is a parent, sovereign, and teacher. Yes or no? Show me the passage. If he replies that such a sutra passage exists, insist on knowing whether or not he has two fathers. But if he says that no passage like this exists, then demand to know how, having abandoned his parent, he could treat another person well. In addition, you should assert that the Lotus Sutra in no way resembles the other sutras, quoting the passage, quote, in these more than 40 years I've not yet revealed the truth. You know the passage. If he attempts to cite the passage, she will immediately go to the world of peace and delight, from the Nembutsu, then demand to know if he admits that he is at a loss to reply to your question. If he admits this, then you should further explain the meaning of this passage. You must be firmly resolved. Be confident going into this debate that you know the truth, yes? Do not begrudge your fief. Do not think of your wife and children, and do not depend on others. You must simply make up your mind Look at the world this year as a mirror, self and environment, yeah. The reason that you have survived until now, when so many have died, was so that you could meet with this affair. That's an interesting perspective on karma, right? Something we easily forget, especially if we're struggling with something or several things, right? We think that somehow something is being imposed upon us. And yet, it's really just cleaning house. That's what we're doing. Sometimes cleaning house means you run into some pretty foul-smelling stuff. But it's not because that foul-smelling stuff came from somewhere else and was put upon you. It's a result of stuff that you have not taken care of, forgot about, or manifested because of something or some things that you did in the past. So just get about the work of cleaning it up. Stop worrying about where it came from, who's at fault, all of that. See, that's samsara. That's what's weighing you down and making you miserable, making you suffer. Stop it. Oh, look at that rotted melon I left or that somehow appeared in the bottom of my refrigerator. Just clean it up. Move on. This is where you will ford the sita. This will determine whether or not you win honor or disgrace in your name. This is what is meant when it is said that it is difficult to be born as a human being and that it is difficult to believe in the Lotus Sutra. You should meditate intently that Shakyamuni, many treasures, and the Buddhas of the 10 directions will all gather and take possession of your body to assist you. If you happen to be summoned before the steward, you should first explain all of this thoroughly. Now, that last statement, I want you to keep in mind the video I did recently on presence at the Butsudan, because that's what this is saying. This is what Nichiren is saying, that you should meditate, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, intently, right, single-mindedly seek Buddha, that Shakyamuni, Buddha, many treasures, and Buddhas of the 10 directions, isn't that the ceremony in the sky? The Lotus Sutra account? And take possession of your body, inculcate your Buddha-ness, that in that ceremony, get it, the treasure tower, you are, to assist you, to be present in every breath you take. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. This is the practice. And he's telling this monk, this samurai, this practitioner, about to enter debate, that here's some things to say, here's some ways to construct your debate, but at the most essential is that you chant, you active meditation, right? You invoke the treasure tower, your Buddha-ness, to carry you into this debate with ultimate confidence. With my deep respect, Nichiren. This was in 1277. What a thing to live up to. That's quite, it's quite a powerful advice from Nichiren, right? And that was the entirety of that sutra, but pretty meaty, I would say. So let's run our lives in that respect. Let's follow that teaching. Pretty simple. We have the benefit of a Butsudan with a scroll constructed by Nichiren for us to wrap our minds around this enlightenment, this treasure tower concept, this invoking of our Buddha nature every day, every moment of life. What a tremendous practice that Nichiren has given us to follow Shakyamuni's teaching, the Dharma. Bodhisattva Nichiren has made it so excessively simple that given the modern world, easy to take for granted. And that's why whenever doubt starts to creep into our minds, we need to redouble our efforts. We can't let samsara win. We need to see samsara as golden opportunities, moment to moment to moment. Right? It's like a surfer riding a wave on the ocean. The purpose is to stay on the wave, not be buried by it. Right? Are you living samsara or are you living Buddha-ness? The Buddha way. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for listening. Thank you for liking, subscribing. Thank you for your purchases, ebooks, books, mandala. Don't forget all the free resources, threefoldlotus.com, and the podcasts. Whatever it takes to bolster your conviction in your practice. That's what this Sangha is all about, yeah? So thank you. Thank you for participating. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your practice, okay? And in that, please take care of your health. Be kind. It's really an interesting little buzz of a feeling when you know you're being kind. Being conscious of being kind makes you more and more respond in kindness rather than have to consciously commit to it, right? It should become second nature or first nature. All right, that's enough blah, blah, blah for now. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.